Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today is a very special day for me and for the channel because it is the first video in my new place. As you can see, I've got some shelves up behind me with some games, and I'll show you in more detail in a little while what shelves those are and what they're all about. And today is another very special occasion because I'm talking about something that I've had for a while and I've been wanting to talk about for a while, but I've been wanting to let it percolate in my mind and let me have time to find the right words to describe what it is. And what I want to talk to you about today is Monte Cook's Numenera. Numenera is a role-playing game published by Monte Cook Games. It's a very sort of well-regarded Kickstarter success story, and it is a science fantasy role-playing game. Now, I'm going to talk in a lot of detail today about what the game is all about, what the mechanics are like, what the world and the system and the setting is. But as you can see at the bottom, it's going to be quite a long video. So if you want to hear my extended thoughts, stick around. But if you want to hear the abridged version, I'm going to give it to you right now. This game is amazing. It is absolutely incredible. Words fail to properly describe how brilliant the design of both the world and the mechanics in Numenera are. But I'm going to try my best. So if you wanted the abridged, abbreviated version, that's it. This game flipping rocks, okay? If you're looking for something science fantasy, look no further. Go out and buy this immediately. If you're a fan of Monte Cook, go out and buy it immediately. If you're a fan of science fiction or fantasy or science fantasy, obviously just go out and buy this thing immediately. It is 416 pages of amazing, amazing, amazing book. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the setting, okay? Numenera is set in something called the Ninth World, and it's something that you'll never have seen before. Okay, so what is the Ninth World? Well, what you and I are living in at the moment, where you're watching this YouTube video is known as the First World. Sorry, this is the first human civilization. Now, human civilization will rise and it will fall, and once what you and I know as the world has fallen, that would be the end of the First World. There have been 8 of those by the time we read Numenera. It's a game that is set 1 billion years in the future. Now, we struggle to fathom how much 10,000 years is. So 1 million years is unimaginable, and 1 billion years is just beyond human comprehension. So it is set 1 billion years in the future. It is still set on Earth, but Earth is very different 1 billion years in the future because of movement of tectonic plates and change in orbits of the solar system. Things change. We've kind of returned to a Pangea type universal one big continent, which is known as the Ninth World. So I'm going to read you a little bit out of the book on the chapter where he just introduces the Ninth World and talks a little bit about the 8 previous civilizations, because that's very important. The Ninth World is Earth, but it is an Earth that has undergone multiple dramatic changes, for it is Earth approximately 1 billion years in the future. Over that nigh incomprehensible span of time, nothing remains constant. Add in the rise and fall of civilizations so great to us that they would seem again nigh incomprehensible, and anything is possible. So each of these civilizations would have lasted millions of years. They would have risen, they would have fallen, and a new civilization would have come in. Now, in the book, they don't specifically talk about those previous civilizations and go into detail about them. That's kind of up to you as the GM, how you want to run that and how you want to sort of create a little bit of the lore yourself. But they do list some facts that we do know about the 8 previous civilizations, just to give you an idea of kind of the span of time that we're talking about here. At least one was the center of a galactic or perhaps intergalactic spacefaring empire. So like Mechatol Rex in Twilight Imperium, that kind of thing. At least one wielded the power of planetary engineering and stellar lifting. At least one had knowledge of the fundamental forces of reality and could alter those forces as they wished. The very laws of physics were theirs to play with, like toys. At least one filled the world with invisible molecule-sized machines called nanites or nanomachines that could deconstruct and reconstruct matter and manipulate energy. At least one explored the universe, the multiverse of other dimensions, parallel universes, and alternate levels of reality. And at least some of these civilizations were not human. So as you can see, a lot happens in 1 billion years. And that is where we find ourselves in Numenera. It's kind of almost post-apocalyptic in the fact that we're at the start in Numenera. We kind of find ourselves at the start of a new civilization. We're at the start of the Ninth World. And well, what are the Numenera? Basically, as you can sort of ascertain from that little brief history lesson, is that a lot of stuff can happen in 1 billion years, and technology would have evolved to such an insane point that to you and I, looking at some of the stuff in this book and some of the stuff that's happened in the 8 worlds that have come and gone, we would fail to see the difference between between seeing it as technology and seeing it as magic. So Numenera are basically the remnants of the previous 8 worlds that, and the thing about the previous 8 worlds is that they're not well documented. So what will happen is your party and your player characters will go around, they'll explore the world, and they'll find what's known as the Numenera. And Numenera are essentially artifacts or remnants of these 8 worlds, pieces of technology that sort of defy logic because they seem to break the laws of time and space. And that's what the Numenera is. It's basically these technological remnants from the previous 8 worlds that to us are indistinguishable from real magic. So that leads me on to another thing. Numenera is not a role-playing game about combat, okay? It is you don't get experience points for killing monsters. You get experience points for discovery. They actually say discovery is the heart of the game in Numenera. So you can play a game of Numenera and kill 30 enemies and not get a single experience point. But if you come up with a clever way to overcome a problem, or you overcome an obstacle, or you discover some amazing Numenera, that's where you're going to get your experience points. And I'll talk a little bit about experience points and the leveling up system in a bit. So, Numenera, how does it work? It is essentially a D20 system where all the rolls are made by the players. So the GM doesn't roll anything. If you're attacking, the player makes an attack roll. If the NPC is attacking the player, they make like a defense roll. So the GM never rolls anything, okay? And the way it works is there's like a difficulty system. So tasks have got a difficulty, 0 being something that anyone can do anytime, like lift up a book. That would be a 0 difficulty. Climb over a mountain, that would be a 3 difficulty. And we have a target number associated with the difficulty challenge of each task. So if it's 3, to find the target number, you multiply that number by 3. So if the difficulty is 3, the target number is 9. You need to roll 9 or higher on a D20 to achieve success. What you do in Numenera is you can reduce the difficulty of a task, either through the use of Numenera artifacts or ciphers, either through the use of skills or abilities, special equipment, or spending effort from one of your 3 pools. Now your pools are basically your stats. You have might, intellect, and speed, okay? Might is like the equivalent of strength. And if a task is a strength task, like say you want to lift something, you can spend some of those points from your might pool to help reduce the difficulty by a step. And you can use a piece of equipment to reduce the difficulty by another step. So say you have a task that was originally a difficulty of 3, you reduce it by 2 steps, now your target number is only 1 because your target number is only 3 because your difficulty is 1. I'm making it sound a lot more complicated than it is. It's actually very, very streamlined. Basically, you have a difficulty, you reduce it if you can, multiply that by 3, it's that number or higher that you need to get on a D20 to achieve success. Very, very basic system. It's 90% of the rolling is going to be done with a D20. You do use a D6 occasionally and a D100 very, very rarely in things like character creation and that sort of thing. And character creation is really, really streamlined in this game. It's actually like a very unique system. This is a very unique game. And the way character creation works is you basically pick a adjective, a noun, and a verb. So I am a something, something, who somethings. And it'll be well, let me find some examples for you. There's only 3 classes in the game, or character types. There's the glaive, which is like your fighter. There is the nano, which is kind of the magic user, and then there's the jack, which is kind of the roguish jack of all trades. So creating your character, let me just find some of these examples here. So the character type is your glaive, your nano, or your jack. So I am a something glaive, or a something nano, or a something jack, who somethings. The character type is that. Then the next one is called the character focus, I think. Character descriptor. So here we have the descriptors: charming, clever, graceful, intelligent, learned, mystical or mechanical, rugged, stealthy, strong, strong-willed, swift or tough. So you could say I'm a charming jack who, and then the last one is the focus. Let's talk about the focuses. So essentially when you're creating a character, you're just putting together a sentence. It really is as simple as that. So I am a charming jack who bears a halo of fire, carries a quiver, commands mental powers, controls beasts. There's a list of them in the book. And each of those will say, add this into your character sheet, add this into your character sheet, do this and that, and there's your character. So creating a character is very straightforward. It's essentially constructing the sentence of an adjective, a noun, and a verb. And each one of those will tell you, put this onto the character sheet, add this to this pool, add this to this stat. And that's the way it works. Very, very, very straightforward. So, once you've created your character, you get to delve into this world. And the world is deep and rich and amazingly well realized in this book. Monty Cook is just a flipping genius. I mean, let's not mess around here. The guy just knows what he's doing. Let me jump in a little bit and just get some page numbers for you. Okay. So, the world of Numenera is kind of the ninth world. It's kind of divided into two sections, really. There's what's known as the Steadfast, which is like the well-documented part of the world. It's the more sort of civilized, more structured part of the world. Then outside of that, the sort of the no man's land is known as the Beyond. So we have the Steadfast, which is like the well-documented part of the world, and then the Beyond, which is sort of as you go past the borders of what is known and what is understood, we enter the Beyond, and that's kind of where a lot of the real mystery happens. And then you can go even further than that to what's known as Beyond the Beyond, which is like really, really out there. Okay. What's also cool, which is something I want to sort of point out, is there's lots of tables in this book for like randomly generating stuff. And you'll randomly generate ciphers, which are like one-use Numeneras, or randomly generate artifacts. And it's just rolling these dice and keeping everything really fluid and really interesting. And the way that experience points work is also something that I want to talk a little bit about. Like I said earlier, you don't get experience points for fighting. You get experience points for exploring and doing that sort of thing. So what will happen is there's something known as a GM intrusion. And a GM intrusion is basically when the GM says, whoop, stop, I'm going to throw a spanner in the works here. And the GM intrusion gives 2 experience points to the player who's having that spanner thrown in their works, okay? What that player then does is they will take 1 for themselves and give 1 to another player, and they'll have to justify that gift of an experience point. What ends up happening is you'll gather experience points throughout the game. You shouldn't get more than 1 or 2 maybe per session itself. And what will happen then is you need to buy 4 steps, 4 sort of perks before you progress to the next tier, which is what we call a level in Numenera. So one will be like buying a skill, one will be adding points to your stat pool, one will be increasing your effort, and the other one escapes me. And once you've done all that, you'll progress to the next tier, and then you'll start over. And each one of those costs 4 XP. So you'll be playing about between 12 and 16 sessions per level in Numenera. So there's plenty of time to build up a character and upgrade and do all that kind of thing. So let me talk a little bit about the book. The book is beautifully illustrated. Okay, it's like I said, it's 416 pages. Oops, daisy, I dropped my character sheet. And you can tell that a lot of time and effort has been put into the production of this book. Okay, every page has got illustrations on it. I mean, every single one of these pages has got some form of illustration on it. It's like just a rich, amazing book to look at. And it's very easy to understand. Like the rules are summarized in the beginning. They go into a little bit more detail at the back of the book. But I mean, I'd be surprised if there's more than 15 pages of rules. And the rest is just lore and campaign setting. And that's what's also interesting about Numenera, is it's as much a campaign, if not more a campaign, than it is a game. Okay, even if you never ever played the game, I'd still recommend picking up this book and having a look, just because if you're interested in science fiction, if you're interested in fantasy, and especially if you're interested in science fantasy, this is something that's just going to be interesting for you to look through anyway. And if you play the book, that's just if you play the game, sorry, that's just icing on the cake. Something else that's cool is there's a bestiary in the book, which is something that just doesn't happen often enough, as far as I'm concerned. You look at things like Pathfinder, you spend so much money on the book and then you have to go and buy another book and another book. It's like Dungeons and Dragons as well. Everything you'll ever need to play in Numenera is in this book. Now that's not to say that there aren't source books. There are other source books. There's the character options and then the player's guide, which is essentially a player's version of this. But this is all you really need. So Numenera by Monty Cook Games. We have a list of ciphers, and ciphers, like I said, are the single-use Numenera. Then there's artifacts. This book just really gears you up to creating something that's rich and deep and full of exploration potential for your player characters. It's not a cheap book, but then I don't think it should be. Okay, it is the most amazing, incredible role-playing game book I've ever read. Monty Cook, if he never did anything else, if this was his swan song, I think he could die a happy man, just because it is pretty much perfect. Not only is it one of the best role-playing game books I've ever read, it's one of the best books I've ever read. It's actually definitely the best role-playing game book I've ever read. I love Numenera. It is solid, simple, easy to teach. Visually, it's just absolutely stunning. The production value is genius. The mechanics are unique. It's a new system. It doesn't feel at all like a rehash or a reskinning of something else that people have done. And even though it uses D20, it uses it in a way that I've never really seen before. And it encourages exploration. I mean, this book is just full of adventure and quests and an amazing rich world to explore. And in addition to obviously having all the maps and all the characters and the lore, you also have some amazing sort of adventures in the book. So you really don't need to buy anything. And even if you're not very creative and you're struggling to come up with a campaign, and that may be an issue because this world is so unique and so new that there's literally never been anything like it before. But there's adventures in the book, and those adventures will help get you started because they are well written, they are very easy to follow, and there's really nothing else that you need. You get this book, you get a D100, D20, and a D6, and you are good to go, having some of the most amazing role-playing adventures of your life. Whew. So that was a whopper. Guys, thank you so much for listening. I hope that you enjoyed. I hope that you like the new the place, and I'm going to show you the shelves and stuff in a little while. But please like, subscribe, support the channel in any way you can, even if it's just sharing the video. And if you can, please consider supporting us on Patreon by making a small pledge. It would really make my life a lot better. But that's Numenera by Monte Cook Games.